What's crack, it's VangelinaSkov, and today we're going to be talking about Trisha Paytas and her boyfriend Moses. If you're not already aware, Trisha is dating a guy called Moses, who is Ethan Klein's brother-in-law. And if for some reason you don't know who Ethan Klein is, he is one of the hosts of the H3H3 podcast, and has now started a podcast with Trisha, which I've already talked about in another video. You can check that out if you want to. Now, the podcast that those two are doing together is called Frenemies, and in the first episode, they talk a lot about Trisha's relationship with Moses. And a lot of what she had to say is very worrying. So I'm just going to be giving you a little run through of what's actually going on, what Trisha said, and what it could mean. But before we get into that, please subscribe and click the bell button to get notifications when I upload. And if you want to, you can also check out the merch with the link in the description. That's right, we have merch. Anyway, on to the video. What was this? I don't know. So like I mentioned, Ethan Klein and Trisha Paytas are now doing a podcast together which they have titled Frenemies, which is a pretty apt name if you ask me. And in episode 1 they talked a lot about Trisha's relationship with Moses, which has apparently been going on for 6 months now. And according to Trisha, everything's going wonderfully. They've said I love you to each other. They've been talking about buying a house together. Moses has been staying at her house almost every night, if not every night, and a lot of his stuff is there too. So it seems like a pretty good, happy relationship. Until she starts to mention some slightly more worrying things. One of the first things she mentions is that Moses won't put Trisha on his Instagram because his mum looks at his stories. And according to Ethan, Moses' parents are very conservative. Now Trisha seems pretty annoyed about this, despite it possibly being quite reasonable on Moses' part to choose whether or not he wants her to be on his Instagram or not. But as to who's in the right there, it's really up to you to use your own judgment. Now that was the first little red flag, but you could kind of brush that off as nothing. Until she keeps going. She later says that she has his Instagram account logged in on her phone so that she can check if he's DMing people. And according to her, she checks his DMs every single night. And of course, Ethan's response to this is along the lines of, I don't like that you're doing this. It seems very possessive. But Trisha seems to see nothing wrong with this. Now, this one tiny thing on its own is extremely worrying because that kind of behavior is toxic. And it is a huge signifier to an emotionally relationship. And although I don't want to preach gender politics at you, I do want to point out that if it had been the other way around and Moses had said that he was checking Trisha's DMs every night, or another couple because people don't really like Trisha, but if it had been the other way around, people would have been up in arms about it, saying that he was toxic. But not that many people have shown concern about Trisha doing this, albeit there have been several people who have voiced their concerns about it and said that she shouldn't be doing this and it's not okay. It's still not the majority of people who are saying this. Anyway, to sort of excuse her behavior or explain why she does it, Trisha says that she needs to check his messages so that she can trust him, because apparently girls would text him. She thinks it's just to annoy her, but according to her, he doesn't really reply anymore and she doesn't check his messages all that much anymore. Although you could definitely say that despite her not checking them all the time anymore, it's still not okay. Now you might be asking yourself, well, why does she feel like she can't trust him? And it may be to do with something that gets brought up later on in the podcast. About halfway through, Ethan and Trisha start talking about a big fight that Trisha and Moses had, which led to them breaking up. Although it wasn't officially breaking up because they weren't officially dating at the time. And at this point, Ethan decides to read out a text that Trisha had sent to him about Moses, saying Moses is disgusting and that you should check him talking to your fans. She also writes in the text that on Valentine's Day she had relations with, I'm trying to keep the YouTube gods happy, had relations with a 23-year-old fan of Ethan's on Valentine's Day. And to go even further with her claims, Trisha also says that he was texting or talking to underage girls. Now, if any of that is true, that could lead to some of Trisha feeling like she can't trust him, although that does not excuse any behavior that is emotionally abusive or toxic, such as checking his private messages. And according to Ethan, when all of this happened and she sent him that text, he checked in with Moses and Moses denied it. And there has been no reason for him to actually believe that this is the case. One more thing worth noting about this portion of their conversation is that Trisha says, oh, I know people are going to think that we're in a toxic relationship. This is interesting because it shows that she knows that her behavior isn't okay, despite her also thinking she's doing nothing wrong, which is something very common for an party in a relationship to do. They'll know that their actions are bad enough to make sure other people don't know about it, or enough to silence their partner and say, you can't tell your friends that I did this, or things like that. Or enough to lie a little bit or defend their actions. But they'll still think they're not really doing anything wrong. And that seems to be the case with Trisha. Now, of course, I'm not saying for definite that this is what she's doing. We're just going off what she has said herself in this podcast. However, the worrying behavior doesn't just stop at checking Moses's DMs. A little bit later on, again in the podcast, Trisha talks about a physical almost fight that they had together. I think the two of them were calling it a tussle. They had been fighting over keys. She wanted to take his keys from him. He didn't want her to have them. And according to her, they fought for 12 hours. Now, this story was only brought up because Ethan asked Trisha, did you punch him? To which she makes a face and doesn't say no, but says Moses is shaking his head no, because he's in the corner of the room while they're filming the podcast. And then after that says that she didn't do it. But then contradicts herself and said, I didn't punch him. It wasn't a punch. I just sort of went like this. And he got bruised. Which sounds like punching somebody. I think whatever your intentions are, if you do hit somebody hard enough to bruise them and to leave marks on them, that is punching them. She also says that at one point during this fight or tussle or whatever you want to call it, she had him on the bed with all her weight on him so that he couldn't get the keys. They say a little bit more after that, but I'm not going to get into that bit. If you've seen the podcast, you'll know what I'm talking about. So although she says that she didn't actually hit him, she does confirm that she left marks on him and lightly tapped him or kinda hit him or just did this. So from what she's saying, just what her own words are in this podcast, it does sound like she is both emotionally and physically towards Moses. Now that has not been confirmed, that's not proved, but the evidence is leaning in that direction. There have also been screenshots going around on Twitter of what appears to be Moses's arm bruised and a couple of DMs. And people are saying that this is a conversation from Moses, this is definitely his arm, but it has not been proved, and a lot of people seem to think that these photos aren't actually the real photos because the background doesn't match up with the background he was supposed to be in at the time. And some people have said that the DMs look faked. For all we know, they could be real, but up until now they have not been proved, and we can't say either way. However, with or without the screenshots, Trisha did confirm that he had bruises. Anyway, after she tells this bit of the story, Ethan asks, are you still tussling? She says, no tussling, but then goes on to say, I have access to all his Instagram accounts. I know when he's texting you guys, I know about your group chat. So it seems like she's really trying to assert her power there. That may not have been her intention, but that is how it comes across. So this entire situation is pretty dodgy, pretty sketchy. It seems like she is really mistreating him. But as I'm recording this, we have yet to hear anything from Moses. So hopefully he says something soon, but it seems like he might not. And it also seems like they're, very in love and planning to buy a house. So who knows what's going to happen. But do let me know in the comments what you think about this situation. Do you think that Trisha is telling the truth, that she's doing all these things? Do you think this is just her weird trolling as usual, but she's just taking it in an odd direction? And if you don't feel like commenting about that, then you can let me know what you're looking forward to most about autumn or fall or whatever you're going to call it. I'm just looking forward to the weather cooling down so I can stop wearing tank tops constantly and actually wear something nice. Anyway guys, that's going to be it from me for now. So as I said at the start of the video, please subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want to, you can check out the Patreon or the memberships with the link in the description, as well as the merch. And you can also follow me on social media. Like, comment, share, and do all the things that I'm supposed to ask you to do at the end of a video, and have a wonderful day. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!